Welcome back. I've teamed up with Domino sugar to create this super delicious peppermint mocha cake. So this is really just my favorite chocolate cake recipe with a bit of instant espresso to really give it a wonderful mocha flavor. I'm pouring it into 4 7-inch cake pans, and I'm going to bake these at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes. You can also make 4 8-inch cake layers if those are the size of pans that you have. After my cake layers baked and cooled, I leveled them using a serrated knife just to make it easier to assemble our cake. Next, it was time to work on our frosting. This cake is frosted with a super delicious peppermint white chocolate frosting made with Domino powdered sugar. It can be made with either a hand mixer or a stand mixer, but once it's done being mixed, I highly recommend stirring it with a rubber spatula just to get it really nice and smooth and force out any excess air. Then it's time to assemble our cake. So I'm decorating this cake on an 8-inch greaseproof cake board, and I'm adding a dab of buttercream underneath that first cake layer just to keep it in place. I like to add a pretty thick layer of frosting onto my cake layers to give each bite of cake really the perfect ratio of frosting to cake. I added some mini chocolate chips and crushed peppermint between each cake layer just to add some texture to every bite. It really makes every bite a little bit crunchy and a little bit chewy, and I highly recommend adding both fillings. I repeated this process with my remaining cake layers, adding about 1/4 cup of mini chocolate chips and I would say 1 to 2 tablespoons of crushed peppermint. As you get to your last cake layer, I highly recommend flipping it upside down just to make it easier to frost and easier to get sharp corners on your cake. I also like to press down with both hands once my cake layers are stacked to force out any excess air and help my cake settle before I add my second layer of frosting. After gently pressing down on my cake, I'm adding a thin layer of frosting all around the cake to act as a crumb coat and trap in any chocolate crumbs and also any filling that might have seeped out. Super important that you do this when you're using a light colored frosting like this with dark cake layers. I chilled my cake in the freezer for about 10 minutes, or you could put it in the fridge for about 30 until the frosting is firm to the touch. That's when the cake is ready for its second thicker layer of frosting. I had to add on a pretty decent amount of frosting to fully cover those dark cake layers, and once I had smoothed it using a bench scraper and a small offset spatula, I added some crushed up peppermint around the base of the cake along with a mocha drip. Be sure that you chill your cake before you add on your drip so that your buttercream doesn't melt or become dented from the warm ganache. I used my leftover ganache to cover the top of the cake, and once I had smoothed it, I added some frosting dollops on top of my cake. I took a paintbrush and a bit of red gel food coloring and I streaked my piping bag before adding my frosting, and that allowed me to create this really fun peppermint inspired look. I used a large French frosting tip, but you could use whatever type you have on hand. I used my remaining crushed up peppermint to add a ring around the top of the cake, and then it was time to cut in and enjoy. The full recipe for this peppermint mocha cake is up on Chelsweets.com, and you can also learn more about Domino sugar at dominosugar.com. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon. Happy holidays!